When the fishing boat disappeared from the radar, everyone assumed the crew had encountered a storm. But there was no storm that night. The sea was perfectly calm. 3 days later, a small boat washed onto a beach hundreds of miles away. Inside was only one person. His name was Daniel Reed. When rescuers found him, he couldn't explain where he had been. He kept repeating the same sentence. The island moved. At first, nobody believed him. Daniel showed them a map. He pointed to a tiny island that wasn't marked on any official chart. He said he had discovered it while drifting at sea. The island was covered in thick green forest, surrounded by black cliffs and strange white rocks. There were no buildings, no roads, no signs of human life. But something about the island was wrong. Daniel said the sun never seemed to move. Morning lasted for hours. Then suddenly, it would become night. There were also birds, but they never made a sound. And the trees were strangely arranged in perfect circles. Daniel had explored the island with 2 other crew members. They found a narrow path leading into the forest. At the end of the path stood a stone archway. Beyond it was a large field covered with hundreds of smooth stones. Every stone had a name carved into it. Daniel recognized some of them. They belonged to people who had disappeared at sea. Then he found something that made his blood run cold. One stone had his own name on it, Daniel Reed. But underneath his name was a date. The date was tomorrow. Daniel ran back toward the beach. His 2 crew members followed him. But when they reached the shore, their boat was gone. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Then Daniel noticed something strange. The island was no longer where it had been. The coastline had completely changed. The beach was different. The cliffs were gone. And far across the water, he could see the same island. Watching them, Daniel couldn't understand what he was seeing. The island seemed to have moved. But islands don't move. At least, they shouldn't. His 2 crew members began searching the beach. They found footprints in the sand. Fresh footprints. The strange thing was, the footprints came from the ocean. Someone had walked out of the water. Daniel followed them. They led toward the forest. He tried to stop the others, but they continued. After several minutes, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an old wooden house. It looked abandoned. Inside, they discovered photographs covering the walls. Hundreds of them. Each photograph showed people standing on the island. Some looked decades old. Others looked recent. Daniel picked up one photograph. It showed a group of sailors standing beside the same stone archway. He recognized one of them. It was his grandfather. Daniel had seen the photograph many times when he was a child. His grandfather had disappeared at sea more than 30 years earlier. Daniel turned the photograph over. There was a handwritten message. The island chooses who leaves. Suddenly, they heard a loud sound outside. The forest became completely silent. Even the wind stopped. Daniel looked through the window. His 2 crew members were standing outside. But they weren't alone. Several people stood behind them. Old sailors, fishermen, explorers, people from different decades. And among them, Daniel's grandfather. He looked exactly as he had in the old photographs. Daniel opened the door. His grandfather looked at him and said, "You shouldn't have come here." Daniel couldn't speak. His grandfather continued, "Tomorrow, the island will move again." Daniel asked what would happen. His grandfather pointed toward the sea. Far away, the water began to disappear. Not dry up, disappear. The horizon slowly moved backward, revealing a huge black structure beneath the ocean. It looked like the ruins of an enormous city. Then the island began to shake. Trees moved. Rocks rolled down the cliffs. The stone archway cracked. And beneath the ground, something began to glow. Daniel's grandfather looked at him one last time. When the island moves, don't be on the shore. The ground suddenly opened. Daniel fell into darkness. Daniel woke up in a large underground chamber. His 2 crew members were beside him. The walls were covered with strange symbols. In the center of the room stood a huge circular stone. It was slowly turning. Daniel realized the symbols weren't random. They were maps. Maps of the ocean. But every map showed the island in a different location. His grandfather's voice echoed from somewhere nearby. The island was never lost. Daniel turned around. His grandfather was standing beside the stone. He explained that the island had existed for hundreds of years. It appeared in different parts of the ocean, sometimes once every few years, sometimes after decades. People who discovered it were given a choice: leave or stay. Those who stayed became part of the island's history. Those who left could never find it again. Daniel looked at the stone. A new map was appearing. It showed their boat. Then it showed a small red mark moving across the ocean. His grandfather looked worried. The island has chosen its next destination. Daniel asked where. His grandfather pointed to the map. The red mark was moving toward a coastline. A coastline Daniel recognized. His home. The island wasn't simply moving randomly. It was heading toward his hometown. Daniel and the others ran toward the surface. The forest was changing around them. Trees disappeared. New paths appeared. The stone archway moved closer to the beach. When they reached the shore, their boat was waiting. Daniel looked back. His grandfather stood beneath the trees. Daniel shouted for him to come. His grandfather smiled. Someone has to remember the island. The boat pulled away. As Daniel watched the island disappear into the mist, he noticed something strange. The stone with his name was still there, but the date had changed. It no longer said tomorrow. It said today. Daniel looked toward the horizon. The island was gone. For the first time, he thought it was finally over. Then his phone suddenly received a signal. One new photograph appeared on the screen. It showed Daniel standing on the beach, but behind him was the island. And beneath the photograph were 4 words, "We know where you live."